What is it you like to talk about?
My patient. Hi. I know you're nervous. I just want to have a chat.
I'm seeing something no one else can see except for me. It's smiling at me. Oh my God!
Yesterday, a patient in your care died brutally in front of you.
I need to find an explanation for what happened.
It's smiling at me. It's smiling at me.
You're going to die! You're going to die! You're going to die! You're going to die!
I found 20 cases involving 19 victims with a direct line linking them all together.
You said only 19. Why is it that everybody else who's seen it is dead and you're alive? I've seen it too.
You?
How long between each victim's death?
None of them survived longer than a week.
Today's my 4th day. I am not gonna keep running. I have to face it.
How does it make you feel?
I'm just really scared that something bad is going to happen. Rose.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of Fresh Cuts. This is Mike. Joining me, as always, it's Mr. Venom. What's up, Venom? How are you?
Greetings and salutations. Happy puppets. Yeah, I'm doing pretty well. Mike, how the hell are you doing?
I'm doing well. We are officially in October now, so whoever's doing like some type of challenge or whatnot, it's probably kicked off. So maybe at the end of the show we can all mention if we're doing anything and what it is. But that's about it for me. Joining us as well as always, it's Don and Nelly. What's up, Don? How are you?
Yeah, what's going on? Always great to be here.
All right. Well, since it's great to be here, let's see if it's even greater to talk about this movie or not. So, we are covering the theatrical release that came out this past Friday. It is called Smile, and it goes as follows as far as the synopsis. After witnessing a bizarre, traumatic incident involving a patient, Dr. Rose Cotter starts experiencing frightening occurrences that she can't explain. Rose must confront her troubling past in order to survive and escape her horrifying new reality. So, do we start with general thoughts? We will do that now, and I'll kick it to Venom to start us off. What did you think of Smile?
I don't know. No, let me explain that. This movie is an absolute enigma to me because I didn't like it, but I didn't hate it. This movie is literally one of the most middle of the ground type horror films. It's so middle of the road that I literally forgot half the movie as I'm walking out of the theater. Like there is nothing exceptional about this film. I didn't think the editing was all that great. I know that the cinematography, they were trying to do some artistic stuff with the camera, but by the third act, it was just getting annoying, you know? Let's see. The performances were fine. I didn't have any problems with any of the performances. The story had the potential to be a really cool story, but just completely fizzles out. Like I don't even think we need to have a quote unquote spoiler section for this movie because there's nothing to spoil. Like we get very little explanation of what's happening in this world, very little world building in general. A little bit of an explanation of what's actually going on, at least what's going on in modern times, and then a little tiny bit of history going back, but never, ever in any way do we get any kind of explanation of what's going on. We just have to accept that this is just some kind of dark entity that just is deciding to do this for whatever reason. Okay, fine. The kills are okay. I think the best kills in the movie are the first and the last. Everything in between is just okay. This movie is very filled with jump scares. And folks, you know how I feel about jump scares. I will say there's one jump scare in this movie that was very effective, and it wasn't necessarily even supposed to be a scary scene. It was just more a reveal of the aftermath of one of the suicides in this movie, just a quick shot. And everyone in my theater like screamed out loud when that one shot appeared. I'm sure you guys know what I'm talking about. But yeah, other than that, I mean, there was a lot of jump scares, very telegraphed. You could tell they were coming, as with 99% of jump scares in this world. I'm just going to say that there was nothing exceptional about this film. I mean, I can't think of anything that I would praise about it. Sosie Bacon was okay. The score was okay. There's like one licensed music in here. In fact, the score actually gets a little, like, how could I put it? Almost annoying after a while. Some of the transitional pieces of music, like when scenes are transitioning to another scene, some of those pieces of music were just like loud percussive noises. They were barely music. And I don't know if the filmmakers chose to do that to kind of set a tone of like disorientation, but it didn't work for me. It just annoyed the shit out of me. And as I said, there's just nothing really that I can praise about this film. It's an okay story that had a lot of potential, but fizzled out completely. This movie is 2 fucking hours. There is no reason on this planet for this movie to be 2 hours. It's barely a 1 hour movie, in my opinion. They could have told this story. This story is like a glorified Tales from the Crypt. They could have covered this in 45 minutes on television and done just as good a job as this movie did. So, yeah, I'm not going to say I hate the movie. It may sound like I have a lot of disdain for the movie, but I'm serious when I say it's so middle of the road that I don't care. Like, I'd rather at least hate a movie because it gives me something to talk about, it gives me something to rant about, whatever. This movie doesn't even give me that. This is like there's the analogy in professional wrestling of any pop is a good pop. And what that means is whether you're a good guy and you get the crowd cheering for you, or you're a bad guy and you get the crowd booing for you, either way, that's a pop. The worst thing that can happen as a professional wrestler is you come out and no one even reacts. Like, no one's cheering, no one's booing. Literally, no one gives a shit that you're even standing there. That's what this movie is. This movie literally could have not been made, and my life would literally be the exact same right now, other than I would have 2 hours of my life back. So, yeah, I don't have a whole lot positive to say about the movie, but I also don't really have a whole lot of negative stuff. It's just middle of the road, dull. I wouldn't recommend it to anyone unless you literally were bored and had 2 fucking hours to kill. Otherwise, I think we can skip Smile.
Okay. So maybe like you would rate it a mild grin?
No, deadpan, my friend.
Neutral jawline.
Neutral.
All right.
Yep.
All right, Don, what do you think of Smile?
I'm kind of right there with Venom. I mean, first of all, let's just get the rabbit out of the room here. 2 hours or like 150 something, like, no, God. To not have any kind of, like he said, there's no story build up, there's no explanation of what this thing is. To me, the best thing is that I can probably say this feels way too late for this kind of a film. This feels very much like the late 2000s Blumhouse type of film, like Bye Bye Man or Truth or Dare or what's that other shit thing that they did?
Which one?
I know. It's like that PG-13 like light R jump scare factory thing that they did in like the late 2000s. Like, this thing feels so very much like that it's like almost hard to believe that this thing hasn't been shelved and just like redistributed to the masses nowadays. Like, it feels so much of that time that it's really hard to like let that go. that would probably be like the best thing I can say about it, is that, you know, you're a fan of like those lighter toned kind of a films where you're not really getting anything like really overtly explicit in it, but you're not getting anything that's really kind of, I mean, it is kind of offensive. I mean, the amount of jump scares in this thing is probably bordering on ludicrous, but like if you're a fan of like the light mainstream kind of affair, and you know you're pushing like the PG-13 kind of boundary to go into R, the 2-hour thing kind of makes it hard to say recommend whether or not. But I mean, I don't really hate it either. So that's kind of the thing. It's like, you know, I kind of was starting to get into it by like the second act, where everything starts happening and like all of these mysterious incidents starts reaching their peak. So I mean, I guess that part of the film was good, and it kind of like distracted me a little to, you know, not notice with the running time. But yeah, I still left this, and I still noticed, I was like, wow, this thing was a lot longer than I thought, because I ended up putting a bigger dent in my concessions than I expected. But I mean, yeah, this thing is just like so bland and it's like so PG-13-ish that it's kind of really hard to say whether or not it's good. I mean, there's like nothing technical wise about it that I noticed that it really made me think like, wow, that thing was lackluster, or, you know, wow, they really should have, you know, left that shot out of it. But then there's also nothing that's kind of made me say, you know, wow, that was pretty cool, or hey, I kind of like that. It's okay for what it is, but I mean, this thing went to the theaters. Like, that's like the big thing for me, is that out of all the films that we've seen this year that, you know, we've seen on, you know, VOD or Shudder, or, you know, I don't know how deeply you guys have it on like the VOD thing, but this thing went to theaters. I don't get it, but yeah, I mean, yeah, overall, I can't say I hated it. I can't say I liked it. I can't say I feel good for including this in my Halloween marathon, but it's a film.
Okay. Yes, it is a film. So I actually, I agree with like most of what both of you guys have said. I'll say personally, I probably enjoyed it a little more than you guys, but I still find it like a middle of the road movie. Now, Don, it's interesting because you're questioning like why this would even go to the theater. I get what you're saying, but I'm almost the opposite, where like, to me, this is a type of movie where everything, like anything that you could describe as fun about it, to me would almost lose all effect seeing at home, to me, because it's just a jump scare, in your face, loud noises type movie that has no legs to it. So I almost would say, like, if I'm going to recommend it, you kind of have to see it in the theater, because I would imagine if I watched this same movie at home without, like, you know, the volume cranked to 11 and a huge screen where it kind of enhances the jump scares, I'd probably think a lot less of it. So I'm kind of like, yeah, fun movie, but zero legs to it. Like, I don't think I would get much, if anything, out of like second and third watches. I don't see it like improving. The story, it's like, I thought the setup was fine, but I feel like they almost try to like go deep with it, and it's just like, no, don't do it. Like, there's no reason for this type of movie that you need to do that. There's all, you know, without spoiling, obviously, there's allegories that they are half attempting to go with. I would say, like, one thing is they definitely go to the well too much with certain things. Like, I am the last person to complain about jump scares. I'm fine with them, but when the type of jump scare you're doing is like almost the same thing over and over and over, at some point you just start tuning out, because you're like expecting it every scene. You're like, well, as soon as something scary happens to her, it's 75% chance it's this, and most of the time you'd be correct with this movie. So yeah, I'm not against jump scares. It's just like, come on, shake it up a little with how you're doing it. I thought it felt like it took a lot of elements from like recent horror. When I say recent, probably like in the last decade or so, like a lot of elements that they kind of threw in there as far as how the story unfolded and what our main character was trying to do to figure things out, to do in investigating. I actually did kind of like the score. I mean, I can understand where it became annoying because it was repeating a lot of it. But I still kind of like the placement of it. It's another one of those movies where like the finale or the kind of like the end is just, to me, that took away a little bit from it because
yeah, it's predictable.
I thought the design was just a little uninspired. Once something actually reveals itself, it's just like, that's the thing. Like, come on. Although it did do something cool in the process of what it was doing, but the initial like design of it, I was just like, what? Like, that's it feels like the same thing I've seen before in like so many recent movies, like Dawn said, like the Blumhouse. And this, like, when I was walking out of theater, I actually thought to myself, like, did I just totally not see like the Blumhouse studio intro? Because this feels
I thought
like
that too. I thought I missed it because, I mean, like I said, I had so many rampant thoughts of like, this is like, 2017, 2018, like Blumhouse kind of material. Like,
was like that $3 to $5 million budget. Where
right, like was I just like reaching into my popcorn, or was I like taking a sip of soda and missed it? Like, I mean, I was almost sitting there like waiting to see like his name pop up in the credits. Like, I thought that's what her.
Is this? I don't think this is. Is this a Blumhouse movie? I don't think it's a Blumhouse movie.
No, it's not. It's not.
Oh,
but
okay.
I was just saying. Like, I kind of thought to myself, did I miss a Blumhouse intro? Because it just had that feel of that era. Like was it like the early 2000s where it's like they were coming out with 3-4 of those every year, where it's like it looks like it has about a $3 to $5 million budget, nothing. And the movies are just very like simplistic, like paint by numbers jump scare movies.
Yeah, like the Annabelle or Oculus or Lights Out or
all better
exactly.
movies.
Yeah.
What else? I'm trying to think. I thought the characters were fine. The story was okay, but obviously there was no reason for this to be 2 hours, and I think that's where they were trying to get a little too involved with the story. Like, you just don't need to do that for this kind of movie. Like, I don't think anyone's like getting deeply entrenched in like the emotional history or all that kind of stuff. Like, I feel like we got enough at the beginning to kind of already set up what the main character's kind of history was and why why she kind of was the way she was. I thought we got enough of that at the beginning, and it almost felt like later on in the movie we just got this extra exposition and flashbacks that we just didn't need, because it didn't really tell me anything more. I mean, sure, it showed you a little more, but it's like, yeah, I kind of assumed this already just by what you already kind of told us earlier in the movie. But like I said, I probably liked it a little more than you guys, but I just don't think this has much legs to it. For me, it's like a one-time watch. Take a date to the theater to get some jump scares, but you're probably never going to seek it out again. Mm-hmm. So I guess that'll wrap up my general thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I remember more about Truth or Dare than I remember about this movie, and that was what, like 2-3 years ago, and I didn't like that movie very much either. But it was at least a little bit more memorable. Like I said, at least when a movie is bad, I remember it more. I'm telling you, in a year, I'm gonna forget this movie even exists. It left such a non-dent in my world of horror that it's like I said, I'm not kidding when I said I forgot like half of it as I'm walking out. It's 2 goddamn hours long. They love hanging on their long shots in this movie. I don't have any problem with Sosie Bacon. I thought she did a fine job, I guess. I mean, it wasn't exceptional necessarily, but she did fine. Crazy how much she looks like her mom. When I saw the name, I'm like, oh, who's Kevin Bacon's daughter in here? And it's like, there's nobody in this movie that looks like Kevin Bacon. What the fuck?
That's Kevin Bacon's daughter?
Kevin Bacon and Kira Sedgwick. Yep, that's their daughter.
Holy
But
crap.
she looks just like Kira. Like, if you put them side by side, she looks
yeah, it's been years since I've seen what she looks like, because I don't really remember her that much.
Yeah, I think I don't even couldn't name a movie that she's in. I think she's in that that John Travolta Angel movie where he's an angel. I fucking forgot the name of that movie. Phenomenon,
yeah.
maybe. I think so.
Sounds right. It sounds right.
Yeah, Kira Sedgwick isn't exactly an actress that's been on my radar for decades by any stretch, but yeah, the point is, I thought Sosie did a fine job. I didn't dislike her. I actually like Caitlin Stacey as Laura Weaver a little bit better, and that's our first girl, our very first victim in the film. I thought that whole scene was probably one of the high points of the film. Actually, I thought the tension was really good. And honestly, the smiles in here being creepy, I don't know, I guess. I mean, anytime a random person just stares at you and smiles, it's creepy. It may not necessarily be a product of the smile itself. I mean, they didn't do the Bloomberg thing where they kind of CG enhance the smiles for like Truth or Dare, making them elongated and, almost look like the Grinch or something. But,
yeah, I actually will praise that. I actually did like the way that they did it in Truth or Dare. That actually added a lot more to the scenes with enhanced distortion.
Exactly, yeah. And honestly, if you want to watch a 2022 movie with some fucked up smiles, I'd recommend The Sadness. Way more fucked up smiles in that movie, especially considering the shit they're doing while they're smiling. That's way more disturbing. I mean, again, I'm going back to my favorite movie of the year, and I shouldn't do that so often, but yeah, I mean, if you're going to make a movie called Smile and people smiling is going to be the major catalyst of the film, you got to do it better than this. And, like I said, for the first almost half of the film, I was on board. I did like this story. I thought the opening scene was cool. Once they start unraveling the connections between, suicide after suicide after suicide, I was digging that. Even when they start talking about, that there was instances of this happening, one of the characters mentions that there's instances of this going back decades, back in Brazil. So it's like this whole curse, if you will, has a history. It has a lineage, but we learned none of that in the film, and that's upsetting.
Yeah.
I mean, when I said earlier that we don't even really need to have a spoiler section today, I'm dead fucking serious. About the only spoilers in this film are who survives and who dies. That's it. Because like I said,
yeah.
If you saw the trailer, you know the story. I mean, there's not really much more you can say about that.
Yeah.
It's funny too, because I actually saw this trailer by accident. You guys know I don't watch trailers. I saw this trailer by accident last week when I went to see the Ronnie James Dio documentary. And I saw the trailer by accident. I didn't expect I usually bring earbuds with me when I go to the theater, but I didn't think there'd be horror movie trailers before a one night only heavy metal, documentary. But they did play the Smile trailer. And after the trailer played, I remember thinking, oh, wow, that was a cool trailer in the sense that they didn't really tell us anything. Like the whole story is still really ambiguous. And I couldn't really make a guess as to where it's going. But then once I watched the movie, I realized that it wasn't that it was a good trailer. It's that it wasn't a very good story. They just don't give us much in this movie. So, yeah, like I said, another thing about this film, maybe not the film specifically as the audience. Mike knows this, but listeners might. I tend to prefer to watch my movies at theatrical releases, on Saturday or Sunday morning. I like the lack of crowds. Usually it's a little bit cheaper, too, if I can't go to an AMC. If I have to go to another theater, at least I can get a matinee price. But this past weekend, because of my poker schedule and some other stuff that I had lined up, I had to go see this movie on a Friday night. So, of course, Friday night, opening night, Burbank. It's just all teenagers. Well, I say teenagers, but, it's all people like in their late teens, early 20s. And goddamn, if walking out of the theater, every fucking kid was praising this movie. There were two girls behind me saying, this is the scariest thing I've seen in years. And two guys, as I'm walking out of the theater, going, yeah, that was a lot better than I expected it to be. Blah, 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 blah. And again, if you like the movie, no problem. I have no issues with you whatsoever. But this is why I don't go to movies on Friday nights, because it's all the younger folks. And either A, they fuck up your experience by either not shutting up, not being respectful. That didn't happen this week. Everybody was respectful. Nobody had their cell phones on. It was actually a really nice Friday night experience. But then just, the fact that almost everyone under the age of 30 in that theater was just praising the shit out of it. And then finally I saw a guy kind of my age walk out of the theater and walk into the bathroom at the same time I did. And I just kind of asked him, what'd you think? And he just went, so yeah, I think if you've been watching horror as long as we have, a movie like this really doesn't come off as original or scary or whatever the case may be. It might have if this would have came out in the 80s when we were all teenagers, then yeah. But man, I really wish I could have like put all of my horror knowledge, all my 40 plus years of horror knowledge on like a flash drive and then plug it into their head so that then they can realize, oh shit, Smile's not that good. I don't know. Oh God, yeah, I hate Friday nights at the theater.
I did feel like the first two acts set up like an interesting premise and story. Like you said, I like the fact that when there was the research, they figured out like, oh, there's other chains of this going on and documented. But then they never really did anything with that, and they just kind of wound it back to like somewhat of an unoriginal conclusion once it's revealed like what I was just like, oh man.
Well, my guess would be, and I think I would actually be in favor of this if they actually do with the prequel route. I'd actually like to see the Brazil stories.
Yeah, exactly.
I would.
It's a prequel, actually.
Yeah. I'm saying I'd love to see the Brazilian stuff, because I think that's actually, like you said, that's pretty intriguing, and it goes on a pretty interesting road to see where this has gone in the past. And I mean, you know, can it get any worse than this?
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah.
The upside down shots were annoying the shit out of me. I like artistic cinematography, and we've seen it before in stuff like Midsommar and the Benson and Moorhead movies, which I'm not always a fan of, but they do have amazing cinematography.
And we just saw it with the new Candyman. Like, we don't need that in every other movie that comes out. That's the problem.
Well, we just don't need it 5 times. We get it 5 fucking times in this movie where there's a scene transition and it transitions to an upside down shot. And it's like, what the fuck, guys? Okay, you're artistic. Stop jamming it down my throat. It just, the cinematography was just bugging the shit out of me by the third act, excuse me. By the time, like, the third time we get an upside down shot, I'm like, okay, that's enough. By the time we get the fourth and fifth, it's like, this is just getting stupid now. It's like they figured out a camera trick and they just abused the shit out of it. And that's really too bad. I mean, I don't know. Is this a first time writer director, Parker Finn? I didn't actually look, but
it sounds that I don't recognize him.
Yeah. Yeah, just a couple of, literally 2 shorts. And then this is their third project, their first full-length feature. But damn, it's just so upsetting when you see a story like this that legitimately has potential. Like, this could have gone down a really dark, demonic route. And instead, we just get, like, we don't really get a culmination of the entire story. We get a culmination of this chapter. Like, this movie, Smile, feels like a smaller chapter in a much larger story. But because this is the first in said, God, I don't even want to use the word franchise because I don't want to will it to happen. I don't want to see another one of these movies if I can avoid it. But I don't know. It felt like it was just like it felt like a middle chapter. Let's go with that. It felt like a middle chapter of a trilogy, and not a very good one either. Like, it felt like a middle chapter in the sense that you should already know the lore and the mythology around this curse. You just don't know where it's going and how it's going to end. But this was the first movie, so it's like it just left me wanting so much. Like, it's one thing to want kills, and yeah, this movie is very lacking in kill. This movie has a very low body count, so if you're looking for your blood and gore, this ain't the movie for you. But you know, I can see how a lot of people might have fun with it. I mean, I've already seen a couple of podcasters, people I consider my contemporaries, my age, who love this movie. So there is a market for this. Like Mike was saying, you know, we can see why people would like this movie. We could see why people would praise this movie. Obviously, you know, with younger audiences. When it's an older member of the horror community, I mean, you know, I'm not going to shit on anybody's opinion. That's not why I'm here. But man, one of the podcasters that came out loving this movie is a guy that I really respect. And God damn if I didn't lose a little bit of my shine for him.
Well, at least he left the theater smiling, right?
Yeah, hey, it seems like if anybody under 30 who goes to see this is probably going to enjoy it. Like I said, if you don't have 20 plus years of horror movie viewing under your belt, you're probably going to like this movie. You know, it doesn't look bad. It's got decent performances. You know, the movie opens up with a nice bloody scene. We don't really get another one at all, even though there is a pretty cool kill at the end of the movie. At the very end of the film, it's not really a bloody one. So I'll explain why in the walkthrough. But yeah, this movie just really leaves you wanting more, and that's unfortunate. You know, for a big budget, you know, theatrical release film, this movie should have had, and it should have had more with less runtime. If that makes sense to everybody, there should have been so much more. For this thing to be a 2-hour story, this story should have been expanded so much more. But instead, like I said earlier, and I'm sticking by that, this is a 1-hour story that they stretched into 2 hours. And a lot of the second half of the movie suffers because of it. You know, because you're like, okay, we get it. We know what's going on. Now let's move forward. It's like, nope. We got to do a little bit more research, or we got to go talking to this person again or that person again. It's like, no, let's move forward. Let's, you know, and it's like the filmmakers wanted to take us on this long ride, but it just failed miserably. I don't want to say the film failed miserably so much as this runtime did.
Well, I also think like the conclusion of the main character with her doing what she does, to me, the more you think about it, it just falls apart. What's the point? There's no reason you need to go do that, because if this entity or whatever is just following you regardless, then why do you have to go there to do that? Like, I don't get it. Like,
another thing too is that this
tying it to that.
Yeah, Rose as a character, Sosie Bacon, our main character, she comes off as a little bit selfish because, in my opinion, she had exactly what she needed to stop this curse. Maybe not stop it forever, but at least stop its current iteration. And she didn't do it. She didn't have the balls to do it. And that bothered the shit out of me, because that is an incredibly selfish person. You're thinking about your own welfare before the welfare of every other person that's going to get fucked after you. Especially, you know, considering what was going on in her life and how everything was falling apart. It's like, you had the tools to end this curse for the time being, and you chose not to. You chose to try to be clever and try to trick it. How the fuck are you going to trick a demon? Come on now. It just doesn't make sense to me. So, yeah, I'm starting to get more and more mad the more I think about the movie. I'm starting to teeter towards I didn't like it.
Well, and here's the difference, like, because I felt like elements of this were trying to do the it follows things where, like, you're tracing it and it can go to multiple people, and there's like an actual chain, like a chain. I don't even know, I was gonna say chain of command, not chain of command, chain of some whatever, chain of people that it's kind of like cycled through. But to me, what It Follows does a lot better is we get crumbs regarding what the entity or what is actually going on, but they don't feel the need to like 100% explain it. You know, they kind of let the audience make its own conclusion. We get enough to know, hey, you're definitely in trouble if it's after you. But then Smile has to do like the lazy exposition, or just a lazy style conclusion where, like, oh, it's just a damn demon like every other damn movie. Yeah. And no matter how creative we kind of set everything up, in the end, it's just another stupid CGI demon that looks computer generated. And like, there's just no imagination to that finale. I think the finale, like, that's kind of what brought the movie down a lot to me, because I actually was kind of having an okay, fun time with it. And then just the finale was like such a sigh of like, okay.
On top of the fact that, I mean, you can kind of predict that ending a good 20, 30 minutes before it actually happens. You can even predict who it's going to happen to, just because of how the story is progressing at that point. God, when an ending is that predictable, it's just upsetting.
And then my thing is, it's like, because by that time that character knew, like, oh, because I think she had shared with him, like, if you watch the person get murdered or whatever, so it's like, so are you telling me all you have to do is turn away from it and then it won't transfer? Because I'm assuming you have to be looking.
Yeah,
right?
I don't think you have to be looking. If you're in the same room as somebody who offs themselves violently, that's still traumatic, my friend. Just not looking at it isn't going to save you. No, but the thing, I'm glad that you brought up It Follows, because I famously am not a fan of It Follows. But I will say It Follows is a trillion times better than this movie. And one of the main reasons that I fall back on that is because It Follows, the way that curse was written out in the screenplay, it makes sense that it continues going forward. You know, they set up the rule that even if someone dies at the end of the chain, it would just go back to the last person, the one who gave it to them, and it would just keep going back, you know, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. This curse had a way to stop it. There was a very obvious and specific way that this curse could have been stopped. Like I said, maybe not forever, but at least for the time being. And she just didn't have either she didn't have the intelligence to figure out what she needed to do, or she didn't have the balls to do what she needed to do. And either way, that makes me dislike this character, because she comes off, you know, at first she comes off as this strong woman. She's a therapist, you know, she helps people. And then obviously as the movie goes along, she breaks down, her psyche breaks down more and more, you know, becoming more of a, you know, blob of jelly as the movie goes along. And that sucked, because it's like, I wanted to see this woman make the hard decision for the sake of the other people that are going to be affected after her. And she didn't. So I instantly don't like that character, because I'm sorry, my friends, I could make that decision. If I know that this curse is just going to keep screwing people over and over again after I'm gone, I'm going to do what needs to be done to stop the curse. And it's a very simple solution. I'm sure, you know, Don and Mike both know what I'm talking about, but goddamn, Sosie Bacon apparently didn't.
Yeah.
Well, anything else we can say? Non-spoilery?
Effectiveness of the marketing campaign?
I will say I saw more trailers for this movie than any fucking horror movie probably since It Chapter 2. And I'm not exaggerating. Like, I don't watch much live television, but when I did, there was a Smile trailer. Every other YouTube video I watched, there's the Smile trailer right before it. Now, obviously, based on, you know, my likes and dislikes on YouTube, it makes sense that they would play a horror movie trailer for me, but it was always Smile. It was just incessantly Smile. And it's like, you couldn't get away with it. And like I said, I ended up seeing the trailer last Tuesday when I went to see the Dio documentary anyway. And since it didn't give away too much away, I wasn't all that upset about it, you know? But there's a reason it didn't give that much away.
I was actually talking about all the, you know, people popping up on live TV promoting it, not knowing what it's for and all that.
All the actual people. Yeah, all the baseball games. Absolutely. Yeah, the marketing campaign, the viral marketing campaign was actually pretty gnarly. Like, I haven't seen anything like that since what, like Blair Witch, maybe?
Yeah.
You know,
it was neat. It's just a weird movie to pick to do it for. Like, wow, like you must have had a lot of confidence that you could get people to go see this movie.
They needed people to go see it opening weekend, because once the reviews come out, this thing's going to drop majorly. I predict about 70% it's going to drop on its second week, because all the reviews are going to come out. And yes, like I said, it is getting positive reviews among certain horror reviewers and podcasters, but it seems like the majority of them are just kind of middle of the road. Like, you know, some will say, yeah, it was okay, it's watchable. It's hard for me to even say it's okay. It's just so forgettable and underwhelming. It's like, why did we bother? Why did we spend the millions to make this movie? Why did we spend the millions to market this movie? And the answer is to get the biggest opening weekend take they could possibly get. And ultimately it succeeded. It made over 20 million this weekend. You know, for a shitty little, you know, I can't say indie horror, it's Paramount Pictures, but, you know, for a little theatrical horror movie that's not an existing IP, to bust out over 20 million on opening weekend is actually pretty impressive, but it's all marketing. It's not like it was the quality of the film that got that many people in the seats. All right, you guys ready?
Yeah, you are.
We kind of already been talking about spoilers anyway, but
yeah, I mean, like I said, honestly, folks, if you haven't seen this film, as I mentioned earlier, the only real spoilers in this movie is who survives and who doesn't. That's really about it. Ultimately, we get very little explanation on the story, on the curse, on this demon, whatever the fuck it is. So let's go ahead and start our walkthrough. What little of it I remember. Okay, so for our opening scene, we are introduced to Rose Cotter. She is a therapist at a emergency mental facility, like where people get taken in from the hospital, you know, who are having mental issues, mental health issues, things like that. She gets a girl named Laura. Just as she's leaving for the weekend, she ends up accidentally forgetting something, going back to her office, and then answering the fateful phone call, which would lead to her interaction with Laura Weaver, played by Caitlin Stasey. Laura, they start up a session. Laura starts talking to her about she's seeing things, she's seeing people that aren't really people. She kind of gives like a preliminary explanation that she witnessed her college professor kill himself with a hammer, of all fucking things. And that since that day, she has seen something following her, talking to her, whispering in her ear, things like that. Of course, Rose doesn't really believe her, thinks that it's just this girl having a mental break. So, you know, she's trying to calm the girl down as much as possible. And then out of nowhere, Laura just starts freaking out, saying, it's right behind you. It's right there. It's right behind you. Of course, Rose turns around. There's nothing back there. You know, the camera turns back to see Laura on the ground, kind of crawling away from something that's coming towards her. At that moment, Rose calls security to get like some medical staff in there to help this girl out, maybe give her an injection to relax her, whatever. But it's too late, because right after Rose hangs up the phone, literally the screaming stops. Laura's screaming just out of nowhere just stops. Rose turns around, and then we get that shot that everyone saw in the trailer of Laura standing in front of her, smiling, her big old toothy grin. And then she takes a piece of pottery that had broken when she originally started freaking out, and she basically slits her own throat, but she slits it in such a fucking gnarly way. She actually starts the cut at the top of her cheek and then comes all the way down around her neck, all the way up partially to the next cheek, and then dies. And the reason that I think this is cool is because when they put the sheet over her, the wound actually makes a smile in blood under the sheet. I don't remember if that's in the trailer, but that was a cool ass shot. Like I actually really thought that was cool. I'm like, oh, all right, this makes sense. Smile. You know, they're slitting their throat in a smile formation and blah, blah, blah. Honestly, it was just a one-time camera gag. It's not like it was going to be, you know, any kind of theme in the film. So after that, Rose, tries to go about her next day of business, of therapy and everything. And she walks up to a patient named Carl. And this is the guy that we see in the trailer, who's just sitting at the edge of his bed, smiling at people as they walk by the door. She goes in there, and Carl is kind of murmuring to himself, basically saying, I'm going to die, you're going to die, we're all going to die, I'm going to die, you're going to die, we're all going to die, just repeating that over and over and over again. And then at one point, Rose tries to walk into his room to try to help him out, and he's sitting there with a big old toothy grin on his face, and he just freaks out, basically freaks out. Doesn't really attack Rose necessarily, but it does make her uncomfortable when he freaks out. Rose ends up getting escorted out of the hospital by her boss, and he basically tells her, okay, you're going to take a week off with pay because, you literally just watched one of your patients kill themselves in front of you. You need some time off. There's no way that everything is cool. She ends up taking some time off, going back home. We end up meeting her husband named Trevor, kind of a young black businessman. Looks like they're pretty successful. They have a nice house, everything else. Were they actually married or engaged? I think they were engaged, right?
I don't even know if they were engaged. I know they weren't married. They were dating.
No, it was beyond dating. They were living together. They bought a house together. They bought that house. So they're either engaged or married. Because she had a ring on, too. She did have a ring on the whole movie. I noticed this shit. Oh. Anyway. Like I said, at the very least, they're engaged. He obviously, at first comes off, like, a supportive, husband, caring, wants to help her out, everything else. But, nothing really comes of it. She ends up going back to the office one day because, well, she claims that she forgot something, but she goes back to the office, to the hospital, I should say, against her boss's wishes, has another interaction with Carl where she's, basically, again, trying to help him out. This time he freaks out even more. And again, she's escorted out of the hospital. And, it's pretty much looking like she may end up losing her job at this point, because at this point she's kind of, she's starting to lose it a little bit. She's starting to see people smiling at her. We get a scene at a birthday party where it's her sister's son's birthday. So her nephew, Rose's nephew. And we see her go to the store, buy a train, like a model train, put it in a box, wrap it up. Everything seems hunky dory. But then the day of the party, when the kid opens up the box, inside of the box is a dead cat. It's actually Rose's dead cat, who had gone missing the night before. And yeah, the cat is just deader than shit. She once again has another kind of episode where she sees, she sees Laura, but this time she sees her at the party. At her nephew's birthday party, sitting in a chair, just staring at her, smiling, of course. Rose ends up having a major mental breakdown right there at the party. She ends up hurting herself. She falls through a glass table at one point when there's a very obvious jump scare with the smiling person getting all up in her face. And she ends up getting treatment, but because of the way that her arms are bandaged, because she cut herself on her arms a lot when she fell through the glass table. But because of the way that her arms are bandaged, she looks like she's tried to commit suicide. So she's constantly, throughout the rest of the movie, pulling down her sleeves, trying to hide her bandages, everything else. So yeah, that's like one of the little horror set pieces that we had. At this point, Rose starts to do a little bit more research. She has an ex-boyfriend who is an officer on the local police force. He's actually the one who answered or filled out the report about the original suicide at the beginning of the movie that Rose witnessed. And it turns out he's an ex-boyfriend of hers. He ends up going to the hospital one day, just, out of concern for her. She kind of freaks out. She's not real happy with it. I guess her current man and Trevor is her current man, and the cop, I forgot the cop's name. Oh, well. Joel. There it is. So yeah, Joel and Trevor obviously don't like each other for one reason or another. And, like I said, he reaches out to her to help. Once she starts having more hallucinations, seeing more people smiling at her. At this point, she's starting to hear voices, whispers in the night, things like that. So at this point, she actually goes to her ex-boyfriend's apartment only because she has nowhere else to go. At this point, she's already had a falling out with Trevor. Trevor has already kind of done the douchebag, significant other in a horror movie that fucking trope that I can't fucking stand, where he instantly turns on her. As soon as she starts acting even the little bit off, he starts disassociating himself with her, kind of disconnecting. And by the end of the movie, not even the end of the movie, by halfway through the movie, he's just a giant fucking douchebag who completely gave up on his fiance because she had a mental break. That's a pretty fucked up thing. I even said out loud in the theater, "Fucking dick." I didn't care. I just couldn't deal with it. There's multiple scenes where her husband fiance, whatever, Trevor, actually calls the psychiatrist her therapist. So, she is a therapist who also has a therapist, and basically calls her over. Trevor calls her over. She comes home one day after seeing her ex-boyfriend, not sexually or anything, by the way. She's not doing anything bad. She's only going to see Joel to try to get information because he's a cop. I'll elaborate on that in a second. But yeah, at this point, Trevor has invited her therapist to the house. When Rose arrives at home, she gets upset about it. Who the fuck are you to tell me I need therapy, or blah, 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 blah. Even though throughout the entirety of the movie, Rose just sounds absolutely insane. It's funny because she's completely blind to the irony of the fact that she's been a therapist for all these people with mental health issues, never ever believing their crazy stories. And now she's the one telling a crazy story to a therapist who's not believing her. So that was actually a nice little bit of karma. So fuck her. like I said, she gets upset that the therapist is there. She ends up leaving the house again and going back to Joel's. At this point, this is where she asks Joel if he can do some digging, since he is a cop. He's a detective, actually. He's a homicide detective, so he's got, obviously, access to a lot of files and things like that. So he basically starts doing research. So first they research Laura Weaver, the original girl that killed herself at the beginning. She witnessed her college professor kill himself. So then they went back and looked at his name, and his name was attached to an incident about a week earlier from his suicide, where he witnessed someone killing themselves. And then we kind of get like a little montage of him going through files, and we see that it just keeps going back. Every time he finds someone who killed themselves, their name is in a police report from a week earlier where they witnessed someone kill themselves. So at that point, Rose starts to kind of realize that it's the trauma of watching someone kill themselves that's kind of giving this demon his power and his ability to jump from witness to witness. So this is where we finally get the understanding that if this demon possesses someone and then that person kills themselves in front of someone, the demonic activity transfers to the new witness. So anyway, at this exact moment, I'm thinking to myself, okay, go to an isolated area and kill yourself. There's no witness. It ends the curse. This isn't like It Follows, where it just goes back, because it can't go back because it already killed the person the previous suicide. They're already dead.
Yeah,
so literally,
I was thinking maybe that's what she was going to do. Like she was going to have her little freaking peace of mind with her mom ghost and then kill herself to like have the finale. But of course not.
Nope. So basically, while she's driving around trying to process all this new information in her head, that's when she realizes, oh, there has to be a witness. It can't just be someone killing themselves. There has to be someone there to witness it. And then she literally out loud says, I know what I have to do. So, of course, I'm thinking, okay, cool. She's a smart girl. She's going to go somewhere isolated. She's going to take her husband's gun and blow her head off. And the curse is over, at least for now. Nope. She ends up going back to her childhood home, which is, just completely disheveled and rotted. It's just an old country house that no one's lived in for what looks like over 20, 30 years. She's there by herself. It looks like there's not much of a neighborhood. It looks like it's one of those like miles in between your nearest neighbor type situation, because it's literally just a house standing in a field. And while she's there, she does have an interaction with her mother. I did forget to mention that Rose actually does have childhood trauma because her mother was a drug and alcohol addict. And basically one night when mom drank too much and took way too many pills, she basically asked Rose for help. She said, Rose, call the ambulance, call a doctor, do something. Rose basically just shakes her head no and slips out of the room and just closes the door, basically letting her mother die. So basically, that's kind of her backstory. I did mention earlier that she has a sister, but the sister was older, so she was already out of the picture by this point. She had already left because of the mom's abusive ways and, all her addictions and everything else. But Rose was too young to leave the house, so she had to take the brunt of it. Dad, I had no idea. I don't even know if they mentioned Dad or not, if he died or just took off. But the dad is not in the picture. So, yeah, you've got little 10-year-old Rose dealing with her drug and alcohol addicted mother. And she basically just makes the call one night that this is it. I'm not going to help you. I'm not going to bring the phone over to you. I'm going to walk away and just let you die in your bed. And of course, she's been dealing with that trauma her whole life, which, could be part of what made her a candidate for this curse, aside from, watching Laura kill herself. But yeah, she's got that past trauma. So anyway, when she does go back home, she's there and she has an interaction with her, her mother's spirit, supposedly. And they're talking back and forth. This is when we get all the information about the drug addiction. And we get to see a flashback scene of Rose actually walking out of the bedroom and closing the door on her mother, who's, basically laying in the bed, begging for help. But, she couldn't move on her own, blah, blah, blah. And then Rose basically says, I'm done with this trauma. Like she's speaking to the spirit of her mother. And they're in the mom's bedroom, like the actual room where she died. And, they have a little bit of a back and forth about, why this, why that. And Rose finally says, I let you die because I was scared of you, because I was fucking terrified. You did nothing but, emotionally and physically abuse us. So why would I save you? Blah, blah, blah. I mean, valid reason. I'm not giving Rose shit for that at all. Shit. So Rose basically says, I'm done with this trauma. I'm walking away from it. She walks out of the bedroom, closes the bedroom door, walks back out into the living room to do what I think she's going to do. But instead, no, she actually just sits in the living room, almost like she's waiting for the mother spirit to come in. And then she starts hearing footsteps coming towards the living room from the direction of her mother's bedroom. So obviously we think we're going to get, the same spirit of mom that we've already seen. Instead, what we get is a fucking 9-foot tall version of mom who didn't look anywhere near as good as the creature from Barbarian, I should say. Barbarian looked so much nicer. Granted, it probably wasn't as much CG either. But yeah, this was just a CG monstrosity. Like I said, it vaguely had the features of her mother, but yeah, like the face was all deteriorated, very demonic looking, blah, blah, blah. Long black hair, very Asian ghost story. But basically, they have a little bit of a struggle, and Rose ends up smashing a kerosene lantern on the demon's head, basically setting it on fire. So she's sitting there watching this thing burn. I'm literally in my head yelling at the screen, don't you dare leave. There's no way this is over. There's no fucking way this is over. And what the fuck does she do? She gets back in her car and goes back to civilization like the idiot that she is. She ends up having it's almost like a dream in a dream where like she wakes up. Oh, right. That's what it was. At this point, or at one point in the film, they are able to talk to a survivor, someone who actually survived this curse, the only person on record who survived this. And the advice that this person gives to Rose is, you need to kill someone. You need to kill someone in front of a witness, which is why this guy is in prison. He basically killed someone in front of another person, which transferred the curse over to them. So, I mean, that I actually thought was kind of clever. I mean, granted, you have to commit murder to get out of this curse, but, you want to spend the rest of your life in jail or dead, Yeah,
another kind of similar thing that It Follows, to pass it to someone else.
Big time. So, at this point, after Rose escapes the house the first time, she actually decides to do that. She actually decides to take a knife to the hospital. And I might be saying these scenes out of order, folks, and I really don't care because I don't like this movie, so it's okay. At one point, she actually takes a knife back to the hospital, the mental facility that she works at, and she goes back to see Carl. She agitates Carl enough until her boss comes running into the room. And then what we see her do is she pulls the knife out of her sleeve and just starts stabbing the shit out of Carl, excuse me. At this point, I'm thinking the doctor probably ran out of the room, didn't witness it, and fucked everything up, and she just killed the guy for no reason. But no, the camera does turn around, and it shows the doctor sitting there screaming at Rose, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" But then out of nowhere, the doctor peels his fucking face off, literally just peels it off like it's a flesh mask. And at that moment, Rose wakes up and she's still at her fucking mother's house. Like the whole interaction, the whole burning thing never happened. She's still there. So, obviously she's still there and she's about to deal, she's trying to think of what she's going to do to deal with this situation. And just as she's starting to think of an idea, her ex shows up, Joel. How the hell Joel found out she lived at that house is beyond me, but there it is. Joel shows up. He is a cop. He's a homicide detective. I guess I'll allow it, even though it's odd, since that address shouldn't even be on record for her, but whatever. Joel shows up. He tries to get into the house. He's unable to. The door is locked. Well, she actually locked it. Like when Rose saw Joel pull up in his car, she starts screaming, "No, no, no, you can't be here. You know, I need to be alone." And she runs into the house and locks the door behind her. After she walks back into the house with the door locked, there's Mom, or Demon, whatever you want to call this thing, our 8-foot, 9-foot fucking, you know, androgynous monster. And this is actually a pretty cool scene. Basically what we see is, you know, we see the demon speaking to her, basically saying, "You're never going to get rid of me. You're never going to escape me." And then they actually show how the demon gets into these people, and it's not the way you think. It's not like the demon just magically transforms itself into a person or whatever. No, this thing opens your mouth and spreads it open to comical degrees. Like, you know, there's no way the human mouth could open that far. She's doing this to Rose, by the way, and literally climbs head first into Rose's mouth. And we don't see the whole climbing in. We see her put her head in Rose's mouth, and then we go back to outside. Joel's still trying to get in. He hears a commotion inside. He hears Rose struggling against something. But then the noise just stops. Out of nowhere, the noise stops. He's finally able to kick the door down. And when he walks in, what he finds is Rose pouring the kerosene from the lamp on herself with her back turned, mind you. Her back is facing the camera. Of course, she turns around. She's got the big shit-eating grin on her face. She lights a match and just lights herself up on fire, which was actually a pretty impressive effect. Very CG, obviously, but, you know, mildly good looking. And then at that exact moment, we see Joel kind of just reacting to this whole thing. The camera starts to zoom into his eyes, and it eventually zooms in close enough that we actually see Rose burning in the reflection of his eyeball. And then I think that's it, right? I don't think there was like an epitaph or anything like that, or definitely not a post-credit scene. But
yeah, no, I stuck around to see, and I did not see one.
Yeah, so that's it, folks. That's Smile 2022. Like I said, no explanation whatsoever of what this curse is. The best that we get is when Joel goes back down the chain of suicides and basically never finds an end to, you know, all these suicides, these string of suicides. It's the guy in jail, the survivor of the curse, who ends up telling Rose kind of the history, not the history, but what he knows about the curse. And that when he was doing research, he said he found chains of suicides going back decades, even finding an incident in Brazil was what he mentioned. So like Don said, you know, maybe we'll get that movie, you know, give me the movie where this whole thing starts. Like, you know, somebody had to have either made a shitty deal with a demon, or, I mean, there's got to be more to this than just a demon decides to fuck with people. There has to be more to it. And if there's not more to it, shame on you, Parker Finn, who wrote and directed this film. So I get to put all the blame on one person, and I like when that happens. So, yeah. I don't know what else to say.
Yeah, I've had nothing.
All right, yeah. I don't have much else to add. Like I said, I had an okay time with it, but I just don't think there's much. I don't think there's going to be much value on repeat viewings. Like, there was nothing when I was leaving the theater. There was nothing about it that, you know, had me thinking like, oh, I wish I could like dive deeper into this story, because there just wasn't much. And the jump scares were fun in the theater because it's big and loud. But even though I have surround sound at home, I just think it's not the, you know, it's nothing that's
it's not Dolby. It's not Dolby Cinema by any stretch. I saw this in a Dolby Cinema. So yeah, every single jump scare shook my chair, which started to get annoying after a while, like I said, but you know, whatever. I did forget to mention there is a little tiny bit more star power in this movie. Rose's boss at the mental facility is actually played by Kal Penn, who most people would know as Kumar from the Harold and Kumar movies. So, you know, it's something.
Yeah, Kal Penn is definitely.
I mean, he's in all of two scenes in the whole movie, and then he gets to peel his face off, and that's it.
It's kind of funny because in Harold and Kumar, he was playing like a med student, and I swear he's been like a doctor in multiple roles now. So it's kind of funny.
actually, yeah.
Okay, well, I think that's going to wrap up our discussion on Smile, so let's find out where else we can be heard, and it might make people smile a little bit more. So, Venom, you're up first.
All right, so the main show, No More Room in Hell, episode 48 is still our main episode. Those were my picks, where we looked at 1960s Eyes Without a Face and 2014's Goodnight Mommy. You can also hear me on No More Room in Hell presents Creature Comforts. We're still on the bonus episode. You know, we're still trying to find a date and time to record our true episode 12, which we have picked our movie, but we're going to keep it under our hats for now. So look out for that episode, hopefully sooner than later. What else we got? I don't think I have any guest spots coming up. Cut to the Chase. I'm doing Cut to the Chase. I'm doing The Dark Parade, all for October. Oh, one more show I forgot to mention. The Crystal Lake Gift Shop. Episode 1 is available now. Episode 2 is in the can. We have recorded it with our special guest, Lacey Liu, who you guys know from her multiple appearances here on Fresh Cuts. And, of course, we talk about episode 2 of Friday the 13th, the series, on that one. I think that one will probably be out sometime later this week, at the absolute latest, early next week. But, yeah, we'll see how quick I can get that edited. That's it for me, Mike.
Cool. All right. What do you got, Don?
Not much. Horror Countdown is on hiatus for the coming year because Halloween, Italian Horror Month, and Christmas take priority over the show, and I just can't be asked anymore to talk to other people about their choices. I want time to myself during these high holy days. So you can find that on most podcast services. It's out there for you to check out season 1 and check out all of the fun topics and discussions in preparation for season 2, which will be start of the new year. And I can say I'm returning to the Nightclub podcast. I was on there recently to do Sharknado, and they asked me back to do a film in the Gates of Hell trilogy. So I think I'm doing. I think they said either Beyond or Gates of or City of the Living Dead. I don't remember. I'd have to check. I'm doing one of the two. I just don't remember which one. I thought they asked me back to do the whole trilogy, but they said no. We only want you back for one. So that was a slight mistake on my end. But yeah, I think I'm doing either Beyond or City of the Living Dead. I don't remember, but yeah, that should be recording soon once I remember which one it is and get a date down. But yeah, other than that, like you said, Creature Comforts, we've got our film picked out. We need our date, but I guess that's it for me.
Okay. As far as I go, yeah, just No More Room in Hell, Crystal Lake Gift Shop, and I will be talking Idle Hands on Cut to the Chase's Thrills and Chills. I think it's recording sometime later this week. It was initially supposed to be last Friday, but we had to postpone it. So,
yeah, she asked me to do that. I don't even remember what my film is.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, I believe that's it for me. But next up for Fresh Cuts, it's not theatrical, but it is kind of a highly anticipated movie. So it is kind of that occasion where even though it's coming to a VOD service, it is still kind of buzzing in the horror community for many different reasons, but that would be the Hellraiser remake. Yeah. I don't even know if it's a remake or just like a new.
It's not. I think it's kind of like where it was. It's a readaptation of the source novel.
Okay, yeah, that's a more accurate way to put it.
Yeah, I think it's the way Chapter 1 was, where it's a readaptation of the source novel.
Okay, yeah, cool. And that hits Hulu, I think it's either this Thursday or Friday. And so, yeah, that'll be the next episode. We actually have pretty much most of October planned because I think, it's a mix of either theatrical or like more known stuff coming to VOD, so we're not
Yeah,
going to do much hunting this
There's
month.
too many high-profile releases for us to ignore. That I think we can make the announcement that we actually have the entire month planned out. We're not going to reveal all of them yet, but I think we've already got our choices selected.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. So we won't have any trouble announcing them at the end of each episode this month. I mean, for the following episode. But yeah, that's going to do it for this episode of Fresh Cuts. Thanks, everybody, for listening. I hope maybe this movie made you smile. If not, maybe the episode made you smile. But that said, we're going to get out of here. So let's say bye to
Later.
What the fuck are you smiling at?
Peace.